as somebody who has basically dedicated their entire channel to becoming a She-Ra fan page, there's still a couple episodes that I can't stand. I sometimes rewatch them because I am doing a watch through of the show that I love. So why wouldn't I watch an episode and appreciate all the lovely art and sound design and voice acting in it, except for some episodes. Also, I've never done makeup like this before, so please don't roast me too hard. I will be going over, obviously, some honorable mentions, and then also the 5 episodes that I think are the absolute worst. But you know, I don't want to only say bad things about the show that I love, so as a palate cleanser, I'm also going to give you my 5 favorites. So that way it's like getting a scoop of ice cream after the dog turd, which they totally go so well together. Trust me. No, don't trust me. I wouldn't know. But maybe you would. Anyways, maybe it'll be interesting for you to see which episodes I think are the stinkiest garbage, and you let me know which episodes are your least favorite. Why you don't like X, Y, and Z. Like, to be honest, I used to hate season 5. I did not want to watch it at all. I thought it was really bad. I was not interested in it. But as I watched it over and over and over again, I realized, wow, I'm missing a lot of the beauty here. And then some of them turned into some of my favorite moments of the entire show. But we'll get into it, starting with my honorable mention for best episode is from season 1, episode 9, No Princess Left Behind. I like this episode for all the wrong reasons. We get to see Adora fail so bad at the Glimmer rescue mission that everyone thinks she got entrapped and killed. It's just that all the princesses are too nice to say it to her face. Adora got caught by Shadow Weaver, almost got her memories erased if not for Glimmer being a badass. Then Glimmer and Adora would have failed to escape if not for Catra literally delivering Adora the magic sword and letting them leave. But that was because Catra wanted to make Shadow Weaver fail so she could dethrone her mother as Hordak's right hand. It was just an elaborate plan to get back at her mom for the years of abuse. Catra even gloats in the beginning of the episodes that she succeeded where Shadow Weaver and Hordak have been failing for the past 40 years. On top of that, Adora, despite years of training and being rewarded Force Captain rank, manages to piss off all the princesses with her utter failure of leadership skills during the heist. Adora should have been the most qualified person for the mission of breaking into the Fright Zone and saving Glimmer, yet Entrapped accomplished more on their mission than anybody else, which is just kind of ironic because she then becomes a Horde secret weapon in the finale in the next season. There's also a lot of funny moments like Kyle befriending Bo only to get chucked by Seahawk, or Mista having to crawl through sewers, Seahawk failing to riz up Scorpia.
Perhaps you've seen me in your dreams?
No, that's not it.
Shadow Weaver having painfully generic trash talk when speaking to Glimmer. It's all pretty soft entertainment and the show doesn't really strike an emotional chord. It's all pretty surface level drama, and while I love it, it's just the natural conclusion for the past 8 episodes, so it's to be expected when so many conflicts all intersect simultaneously. I know Battle for Bright Moon was a big fight scene, but more stuff happened individually in this episode than the actual finale. I strongly feel that No Princess Left Behind should have been the season 1 showstopper. What would make it even better is Princess Prom was so huge that going from a banger episode into a banger finale with this would have made season 1 end beautifully without a cliche fight scene that accomplished very little for the narrative. Season 2 was also only like 7 episodes, so if season 1 was 9 episodes and season 2 was 10 episodes, I feel like the audience would have been less bummed out by season 3 being so short. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant, so onto the honorable mention trash episode. Season 4, episode 2, The Valley of the Lost. Perfuma being annoying made it an unbearable episode. Huntara was fun, Adora was fun, Double Trouble was fun, Catra and Scorpia were Catra and Scorpia, but like, Perfuma's learnings and character development that we spent so much time working on throughout this episode, it amounted to jack shit because no episode following this circles back to this moment where Perfuma learned to be resourceful, which makes this episode feel like a waste of time, if not for Double Trouble's debut. The easiest way to have made this episode better is just to remove the Stoner Princess, and because they didn't put a lot of effort into it, I won't either. And that is why it is only an honorable mention. 5th best episode, season 1, episode 8. Princess Prom is easily one of the most memorable episodes in She-Ra, and while I love Catra in a suit, and what this show did with Adora's self-esteem and being only part princess via magic and not heritage, and it being something she's insecure about, which Frosta then uses to metaphorically bash Adora over the head when she tries to apologize, in addition to one of the biggest, buffest lesbians showing up like a supermodel, and a child ruler having to deal with unapologetic ageism, and Glimmer being a little bit of a psycho towards Bow. There are an unlimited number of meaningful issues that this episode brings up. However, this episode is known for basically none of those because Cat Girl flirted with Ponytail. While I enjoy every single scene in Princess Prom, I don't actually care that much about the dip scene that everybody gets steamy over, except, you know, Adora is literally shoving her knee up into Catra's coochie. Totally not to get a reaction or anything, but you know. If you combine the romance of every single rom-com I have ever watched and had them form the Megazord of love, this scene still has more riz. Plus, being the most blatant lesbian call-out towards the audience, this episode has to garner a lot of credit for solidifying the fandom. 5th worst episode, Season 1, Episode 6, System Failure. So this episode isn't even that bad. It gave us a fantastic introduction to Entrapta, gave Bow some much needed screen time, and gave us a lot of funny bits. Like, this is actually one of the funniest episodes in the series. My issue with it are how the episode starts out with Glimmer and Adora just being plain mean to Bow over something he's incredibly excited about. Shutting down Bow is incredibly inappropriate here because the writers never circle back to this bit of drama, and we never see Glimmer and Adora be asses to him again. It's completely out of character here, and we see later in the show that Bow has no problem standing up for himself and others. Having Bow be weak in this opening scene breaks his character, and having the other two be mean also breaks their character. Glimmer is known for her sarcasm and snide remarks, so I can let it slide in regards to her, but later on, the show demonstrates Bow's charisma and rallying skills with Entrapta's kitchen staff, which conveys the opposite message of what the show opened up about. I feel sick to my stomach whenever I rewatch this intro scene because it's random crap conflict the writers cooked up just to give a hook to the episode. This isn't even my biggest issue with the episode. The entire thing takes place in Drill, which is just purple and gray. It's so devoid of color. I genuinely am grossed out by the artistic choices throughout the episode, and overall, it is just visually an incredibly uncomfortable episode. Adora, Bow, and the kitchen staff are the only reprieve from the dreary colors that the creators decided to go with. I have a similar issue in Season 5 when they're on Horde Prime's ship, but we cut back to Etheria often enough that it breaks up the monotony and gives me some eye candy. So the 4th best episode, Season 1, Episode 11, Promise. I genuinely feel that this episode is the most underrated in the show. If you've seen my video about why Catra is liked by so many people and a deep dive into Adora's psyche about how she is desperately trying to play the role of the hero because it's what people expect of her, not because it's what she wants, these points are made so clear by how Catra and Adora interact with each other throughout episode 11. This is also the episode where Catra decided to fully commit to being the show's main antagonist because how much disdain she has for Adora, while also displaying what a fraud she is for playing hero when Catra knows playing savior is not what Adora wants, nor is she very good at it either. Catra subtly calls Adora out that she's just playing along with the She-Ra role because she gets constant praise and admiration from everyone in the Princess Alliance and not because she has any real dreams and desires of her own. There's so much packed into this episode that I want to make a video just covering all of it, but that would take a while. But yeah. Personally, this is my second favorite episode, even though I ranked it 4th. I just really like this episode for the stuff that was stuffed in it. So yeah, 4th place. 4th worst episode, Season 2, Episode 1, The Frozen Forest. A lot of shows oriented towards a younger audience tend to sprinkle in moral messages, which is one of my biggest gripes with Season 1 of The Owl House and Steven Universe. And She-Ra does it way less than these shows, but for some reason the writers decided to shove in some morals about leadership and listening and friendship towards the end between Glimmer and Frosta. It was the most forced writing in the entire show. Frosta is regularly overstepping boundaries and behaving inappropriately throughout the episode, so it makes perfect sense when Glimmer yells at her. This leads into a scene where Glimmer apologizes and admits she has some growing up to do, which Yeah, but that's not the issue that was plaguing the entire episode. Even from the Horde's perspective, Super Pal Trio is still mulling over their near victory from the Season 1 finale and sort of twiddling their thumbs, trying out new BattleBot technology, and that's sort of it. BattleBots that we only see like once ever again, by the way, and that is during Float Arena's introduction. Entrapta and Hordak's relationship expands in the most minute way in this episode, but it's so small that it's barely worth mentioning, so I guess I mentioned it anyway, so the joke's on me. The writers attempted to find common ground between Glimmer and Frosta. Frosta being annoying could have been an episode. Glimmer being a bad leader could have been an episode. They fucking sullied the punchline on both of those. Wow. Third best episode, Season 2, Episode 6, Light Spinner. I feel as though the Light Spinner episode's only memorable because we learned Shadow Weaver's backstory. The funny part is the whole flashback part of the episode isn't even what I liked about it. I almost ranked this episode among my 5 worst because I thought the Light Spinner story was a little boring. I realized later the stuff that made this episode interesting was Shadow Weaver pondering her regrets and thinking back to the day she fully transitioned and became Shadow Weaver. You see, dead names aren't just for trans people. Shadow Weaver still thinks of herself as the hero despite this, and getting expelled from the Sorcerer Society was her initial downfall. You know, kind of like a shitty prequel to the protagonist's true story. For us, we see Shadow Weaver's flashbacks as her descent into garbage. But from her own perspective, it was her against the world, her trial by fire, and the moment she realized that the Horde were the true heroes in this scenario. This is one of the reasons why Shadow Weaver can justify manipulating Catra throughout this episode and playing nice mom for a couple scenes. It's just one small sacrifice in her attempt to fix the world. This is a key thing to note in narcissists, since they are the bee's knees in their own minds, or at the very least trying desperately to be the bee's knees and pretending they are to cope with the fact that they aren't, plus their complete lack of ability to think of the world through the lens of another person's experiences. Shadow Weaver can't even feel bad because she thinks Catra's a pissant. We see Shadow Weaver transition from a humble magician, teaching witchlings, then transforms into a monster and becomes a tyrant and abusive mom, then accepting her past as a way of errors, just to rub it in everyone's face at the episode's end, just to make it all the more sweet when she betrays her daughter again. Catra was desperate for affirmation from her mom, and then Shadow Weaver bailing put Catra's life in jeopardy. Shadow Weaver learned nothing. In fact, her daring escape from the Fright Zone is just another one of her thrilling tales of self-sacrifice and intellect. Shadow Weaver pretended to be nice so that she could become an even worse person, which is a really common cliche, but in most media where the villain teams up with their enemy, there usually isn't an aura of motherly love in the process. I hope she'll at least return to the Fright Zone with some milk, but moving on. The episode almost entirely focuses on this development, but doesn't go out of its way to show Shadow Weaver feels perfectly justified in her actions, which adds to the mystery. I didn't consider this perspective until I wanted to articulate why I find this episode so eerily good, and it's because it expertly portrays Shadow Weaver's transcending villainy by faking us out with a make-believe redemption arc. Oftentimes when we see the villain play the role of the hero for a bit, we know they're still capable of villainy and want to do bad things, like Vegeta and Dragon Ball. But we didn't see that with Shadow Weaver. She tried to fool not only Catra, but the audience as well. Shadow Weaver needs to deceive people like a fish needs water. In my abridgment of this show, I sort of explain away this behavior by portraying how the unobtainment spell put a curse on her, which caused her to be evil, which Adora later cures. This could potentially be a part of the canonical lore of the show, but I haven't seen or read anything on that, so moving on. When I originally watched this episode, I thought Shadow Weaver had hit rock bottom and was finally ready for a spiritual awakening and ready to be a mother again. Turns out it's the opposite, and I feel it was expertly written. Third worst episode, Season 3, Episode 5, Remember. After Catra blows up the timeline, Adora realizes reality isn't right and goes looking for a way to fix it. That's the entire episode. It just portrays what that experience is like. The episode is basically just a bad trip, which we spend the entire episode in the Horde with a bunch of muted colors, so it's not like even visually enjoyable. The only part that I really like is how we see early in the episode how Catra knows everything, is playing dumb because she wants to live out her fantasy life with Adora and Shadow Weaver. Then there's some funny bits with Scorpia. We get a fun fight scene between Catra and Adora, as well as getting introduced to corrupted form of Catra, which I just love how bright pink and black look look together, so putting that in an abstract pattern on my favorite cat is just extremely appealing. And then also you've noticed that my Catcher Chibi thing is designed after this. And then I also just made the eyes the trans flag. Yay! There was maybe a total of 3 minutes of this episode's runtime that I actually enjoy. Also, are you like me just now where you suddenly realize the cadets' locker rooms are co-ed? This is actually one of the most progressive shows ever. Second best episode, season 1, episode 1, The Sword, part 1. I remember the night that I first discovered She-Ra. I was camping in Yellowstone. My family had just set up their trailer, and this was one of the few campgrounds that actually had internet. So I was like, oh, I want to download something so I can watch it off Wi-Fi, because we only have like 2 gigabytes of data and I can't suck that a lot up. She-Ra had just recently released, so I downloaded the first episode. I watched She-Ra and I was like, that was really fucking good. And then I downloaded the second episode and the entire season 1 and 2, and I watched the second episode staying up late. I'm like, this is so fucking good, what the hell? And then throughout this trip, I just watched She-Ra, and then I watched it again. A couple weeks after our Yellowstone trip ended, season 3 released. I've never been so hooked on a show after the first episode, and I still don't know specifically why. I think the way the show started out with the protagonist being the villain in a sci-fi setting and getting bewildered by fantasy stuff in the show, plus the pretty seamless integration of dystopian themes with fairy tale vibes, along with incredibly vibrant and unique designs for all the characters. The art was beautiful, the animation was scuffed throughout season 1 that gives it an unparalleled amount of charm that I love. I love finding frames where a character gets stopped drawn halfway through, or Catcher is missing ears, or Adora is bald, and the show's music choice is really boring, but that was like the only thing I wasn't a fan of. Also, Adora is very masculine and leads a little bit into androgyny. I just loved how the show didn't play into like the gender stereotypes for the main characters. This made Adora feel unique and memorable. A lot of cartoons lately have been putting women in masculine roles and having them go about it fabulously, plus there was never a point of misandry plugged into the show, which made it feel very friendly towards audiences that would typically feel uncomfortable by non-conforming shows. Unfortunately, a small group of people still got pissed off that the show de-emphasizes breast size. As for my appreciation of the tomboy main characters, I might be biased because I main Samus in Smash Bros, Leona in League of Legends, and Loader in Risk of Rain. I definitely have a preference for strong women, but that gives me all the more reason to love She-Ra, especially when we get Huntara and Scorpia. Yeah, it's the first episode. I feel like it kind of belongs at least on the top 5 list when it has a very good introduction to this amazing show. So yeah, season 1, episode 1 is the second best episode in my opinion. It's more of as a homage as opposed to objective metrics, and I still think that has a place in top 5s. Second worst episode of She-Ra, season 2, episode 3, Signals. I jokingly refer to this as the Halloween special because the writers temporarily removed the concept of bravery from the show in order to make the characters behave more in line with the spooky environment. Adora was raised in the Fright Zone. Bo enlists himself into a military while pretending he's at university, and then he gets nearly killed by a platoon of soldiers on like an almost daily basis. They are the bravest characters who've ever braved. This is such an uncomfortable episode. They break the characters. Let's just make them cowards just for fun, who get jump scared easily. No, we have some of the bravest fucking characters in all of animation, and then you're gonna make them do poo-poo because you want to make the fucking Halloween episode. Why? This is not the characters. This is not Adora. This is not Bo. This is not Glimmer. And the fucking dumbest part about this is when we cut over to the Horde, Catcher and Scorpia are doing paperwork. Why? Why did you pick the most boring thing to give them on the fucking Halloween episode? At least in my parody, I'm like, oh, she's planning the Halloween party. That's why she's doing paperwork. No, she's just doing paperwork. People will love to see that. Just the conflict is she doesn't know how to do paperwork, therefore it's funny. Which is funny because we have a show that's literally called The Office, and paperwork is basically never used as a plot point for all seasons, and it takes place at a fucking paper company. Holy fuck, he dropped the ball on this episode so bad. Anyway, yeah, can't wait to show you the worst episode. The best She-Ra episode. Season 3, Episode 3, Once Upon a Time in the Waste. Every single time I call this one my favorite, I ask myself, am I just being hyperbolic, or do I actually appreciate this episode on a completely different level? Once Upon a Time in the Waste is my favorite episode because, as I've seen the show several times over and watching Catra go through her struggles, seeking approval from others, failing to impress people, feeling unloved, unimportant, inadequate, then she goes out into the Crimson Waste with unparalleled emotional support in the form of Scorpia, and goes touch grass. Catra was about to break free from her past and everything in her life that was bogging her down, if she decided to stay and rule the Crimson Waste. This would also leave Hordak kind of stranded to rule the Fright Zone on his own, which he really sucks at. And without the Adora's Horde, then they would never get the portal going either, so the Horde would literally just have been defeated without Catra's leadership, while Catra creates her own army in the Crimson Waste. Catra's mommy issues were severely triggered when Adora mentioned that Shadow Weaver came to Brightmoon. Catra was literally one pep talk away from leaving the Horde behind, but her emotional baggage brought her to tears and made her throw a future and a life of her own away in order to give Adora the righteous justice of the Horde out of jealousy for motherly love. Once Upon a Time in the Waste, up until the final couple minutes, is literally just a beach episode for Catra and Scorpia. It's just casual fun, a vacation that isn't presented as one, but the characters kick back and relax, fulfilling a minor mission, but doing so as they please with no repercussions if they fail. It was one of the most relaxing episodes that showed Catra, if you give up the hatred you have for the people that you used to know, you can have an amazing future. Catra sighed with her emotions before she had time to think, reminding me of the stark reality that most people don't get a break from the world long enough to see the terrible situation they're in and how to get out. This episode is a giant warning sign to say, hey, if you're distressed, you need to get out of your own head, go do something new, just focus on having fun and finding a new element to explore yourself. This episode focuses on Catra and Scorpia's self-discovery. Not only that, this is the episode where Scorpia proposes to Catra.
We could rule the Crimson Waste together. Just the two of us.
So, this isn't a proposal as we know it, but it reads like one. And Catra, she's looking for an excuse to walk away, and she's like, oh, my ex, bye. This is insane character development for both of them. Y'all know in Season 4, Catra is extra shitty towards Scorpia, and despite me articulating why in my How Scorpia Ruined Catra video, Catra could also be intentionally avoiding Scorpia and not taking her on missions because Catra doesn't know how to feel about Scorpia's proposal and needs space. However, Catra also fills up her schedule to the point of overworking herself, so she doesn't have to stop and think about spending the rest of her life with Scorpia. It's obvious to me that in Season 4, Catra still really values Scorpia's company and really likes her, but is more so like, is too stun-locked to know what to do about the situation because she's never really been in this situation and was never taught what to do if you encounter a situation like this. This is entirely new territory for her, and the poor girl is killing herself slowly but surely, and Scorpia feels extra bad because she can tell what's going on. It's unfortunate that she was so bogged down with behavioral issues and a maelstrom of uncontrolled emotions that she accidentally becomes incredibly shitty and realizes it too late. I feel like this moment in Once Upon a Time in the Waste is where Scorpia and Catra's relationship began to get rocky. Because remember, Catra still loves Adora, but she also hates Adora. She doesn't hate Scorpia, but Catra is made so uncomfortable by Scorpia's intense displays of affection, which Catra has no idea how to communicate this discomfort other than pushing Scorpia away, which she successfully does later on, only to Catra's dismay to realize she pushed Scorpia too far, and now one of the only people Catra ever loved has walked out on her. The entire episode was a slow burn up to this moment, and it is my favorite. I think the scene that I enjoyed most in this entire episode was when Catra and Scorpia are having a laugh in the canyon right before they meet Tongue Lasher. Scorpia fawns over Catra smiling, and Catra blushes so hard she can't even show her face. I feel like the chemistry was there the whole time, and up until Season 5, I was genuinely thinking Catra was gonna go get over her feelings for Adora and end the show as Scorpia's partner. I was also kind of rooting for Scorpia too, because Scorpia's been putting in so much effort since we meet her for this to be the end goal. And it just feels bad that that payoff didn't get got when they spent so much screen time dedicated to this. In addition, this was one of the most comedic episodes in the show. Once Upon a Time in the Waste is my favorite episode, and in my opinion, the best episode in She-Ra. Now, you might be wondering what the worst episode is, and that is Season 4, Episode 8, Boys Night Out. And either you know or you don't know, and I'm not gonna explain it to you. So, on to my last honorable mention. This one's a good one, though. Season 5, Episode 1, Horde Prime. It's another great episode in my opinion, and it's for a very niche reason, but it leads into one of my favorite character moments in the whole show, which I elaborate on my Why People Like Catra video, which I would absolutely love for you to watch if you haven't. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, like this video if you like this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!